Octopath Traveler made me realise something. I actually like JRPGs. It isn't just Persona. If you would also like to have the same revelation, or just want to give the game a go ahead of the sequel, it's available on Game Pass as of the making of this video. We'll be taking a look at Octopath Traveler on Xbox Series S. This video will be story spoiler free, we'll be showing gameplay from each character's first chapter, and won't be going into too much specific detail regarding the actual story events. If there are any other JRPGs on Game Pass that we're missing out on, and should cover, leave us a comment and let us know. And make sure to subscribe if you like what we do here. So pack a bag, we're setting off and letting you know if Octopath Traveler is worth your time. Octopath Traveler is an interesting gameplay package. Some elements here were incredibly well thought out and implemented, but there are some issues to behold. I'm going to start with what I loved most and work my way through, ending on the issues I had with the gameplay. With that said, the combat system here is divine. There's a lot of depth here with just a few tweaks to the formula. Enemies have different weaknesses, these are to weapons and spells. Each of the 8 total party members has a different blend of weapons and spells, and there is a great balance struck between making everyone useful on their own, but also allowing you free reign to have your party comprised as you wish due to each enemy having multiple weaknesses. Weakness attacks are the only things that break shield, and breaking all of an enemy's shields makes them lose their turn. Battles start out as a party juggling act, using attack combos to break everyone's shields, and evolve into chaining larger attacks to make everything dead. You even get a bit of bonus cash if enemies deal no damage to you in a fight. But the real masterstroke of this combat is the boost system. Every turn you gain a little point, up to a total of 5. These points can be used to stack attacks. For base weapons, this means hitting more times, which is great for breaking shields. For special attacks, such as healing or spells, this boosts the effectiveness of these powers. This is how you do risk versus reward, and encourage inter-party play. Orsterra was my heavy hitter for the most part, so his boosts were always saved for annihilating enemies whose shields had been broken by the rest of the party. Speaking of, I think that every party member was well balanced and offered something unique in both combat and exploration. Some are obviously better. I found Cyrus was insanely useful in combat with his analyze abilities. Alfin is also an insanely powerful support character once you learn how to utilize concoctions. Everyone here does bring something to the table, and it makes deciding who to travel and fight with an actual weighted decision. You can only alter the party at taverns. Exploring the world is fun, but has its issues. We'll get onto those later. The game encourages you to move in a circle from your starting location. I started with Orsterra and then worked counterclockwise through all of the characters. This had me exploring all of the regions. Each area is a path with a few branching areas, hidden dungeons are scattered throughout the world, and towns and cities offer places to rest and side quest. I was always excited to see what new areas awaited me, and exploring every nook and cranny isn't a monumental task and feels both natural and rewarding. I'd also like to touch on the freedom that the game offers. Sure, this is marketed as experience all 8 tales, but you can really play however you wish. If you just want to play Cyrus's tale and call it a day, you can. It'll be hard, but it is doable to just solo a storyline. You will need to do all 8 stories to get the true ending, but that's more of a bonus, and a weirdly hidden one at that. So far, we've got a good core of gameplay. Both combat and exploration are innately fun and rewarding. Now, it's problem time. If I had to pick one game mechanic out of all of them to call the definitive worst, it would easily be random encounters. These have just never been fun. You do a bit of exploring, and bam, you're just pulled into a fight. Do the fight, go back to exploring, back into fighting against your own will. The combat is fun, but it comes dangerously close to feeling like a chore when it's constantly being thrust upon you without warning. There are certain characters with abilities to limit random encounters, but turning this on only worsens another big gameplay issue: XP. Members not currently in your party do not gain XP, and this feels like both a gameplay problem and a really big gameplay narrative disconnect. On the gameplay side, this means that your party varies wildly in power. I've got Powerhouse level 20 Orsterra here next to a group of level 13s. The system creates a weird imbalance, and also doesn't sell me on this group of 8 people actually travelling together. Are the 4 inactive party members just having a picnic whilst the gang fights the evil Lord of Darkness? This sure makes it seem that way. Levelling itself is also pretty slow, and results in a pretty daunting issue: the Chapter 2 level disconnect. Basically, the game gives you recommended levels for each new story chapter, and this is very helpful. Unfortunately, XP gains do not match up with story progression, and by the time you've finished all of the first chapters, you'll be primed for a grind. My main man Ulbrich was leading my party for the entirety of chapter 1, and he was level 20 by the time I was done. Everyone else ranged from level 10 to 16, and the lowest recommended level for chapter 2 is 21, going all the way into the late 20s. Side quests and secondary jobs do help you catch up to the level requirements, but I'm of the opinion that the recommended level should be in line with what you can achieve on the main path, and the optional extras serve to make you more powerful. Due to the extremely subjective nature of this specific issue, I don't think it's enough to knock off an entire point, but it is something to be aware of. If you like digging into side content, you shouldn't have too many issues, but if you're strictly main path focused, there is going to be a bit of a grind. All in all though, everything here is pretty wonderful, save for the random encounters and XP issues. I'm really not letting those go. I found that hours quickly melted away in my time with Octopath Traveler, and the blend of story to exploration to combat kept me engaged. We're giving Octopath Traveler a 4 out of 5 for gameplay. Sure, the game has issues, but at the end of the day, it's fun and has a solid depth to mechanics. I'm impressed. Every once in a while, a game comes along that nails art direction so well that it makes me wish every game looked and sounded like it. Octopath Traveler is one of those games. Let's just start with the mesmerising visuals. These are so good that Square Enix had to trademark HD 2D for it. Environments are richly detailed and all feel like real distinct places. Flame's Grace looks phenomenal in the snowfall, and that's just one example of greatness. Each major location in the game has a distinct look, but at the same time is believable within the same world. Combat arenas look great, and I love how the 2D depth effect is used to make battles feel greater than they actually are. Look, if the footage in this video of the visuals hasn't sold you on them, I sure ain't gonna do a better job. Character sprites are extremely expressive given the limitations. Everyone is nicely detailed, but there's a lot of care with the small flourishes here to enhance emotion. Attack animations are wonderful. Regular attacks look pretty great on their own, but spells are the real star of the show. It really feels like you're channeling the power of the gods. Enemies go flying back when you kill them, and huge attack numbers always put a smile on my face. Everything is backed by a frankly phenomenal score. My D&D games will never be the same again. There is not a single track here that doesn't elevate a scene. The main theme feels like an adventure, and everyone's individual themes reflect character, but also do a good job of blending into the rest of the OST. Sound design is great in its own right, world sound effects do a great job at enhancing locations, and combat sound effects feel way more powerful than they have any right to. Let's talk about UI. Menu UI balances a fine line between giving you everything you need to know at a glance and looking overwhelming. Combat UI is just perfection. Everything you need is seen at a glance. Need to check your HP, SP or boost meter? It's all over here. Not sure whose turn it is next? It's all laid out in this beautiful little line. Can't remember enemy weaknesses or how much shield they have? Well, it's all right there for you. This is a beautiful linking of art direction and gameplay because it completely removes any guesswork and facilitates plan making. All the information is clearly presented to you, it's just up to you what you do with it. Every aspect of the art direction of Octopath Traveler culminates in what I consider to be the highest honour I can bestow. I want to chill out in Clearbrook, or be at peace in Flamegrace, or swim in all the water. It looks so refreshing. Octopath Traveler gets an extremely well-deserved 5 out of 5 for art direction. Now, can someone please tell me how I can live in Rippletide? I need to know.
The ocean is so vast.
Octopath Traveler is a grand narrative concept, but it fumbles the execution. The idea here is that there are 8 stories to tell, and the gang travels together whilst the stories unfold. The unfortunate issue here is that the stories don't really converge until the very end of the game. There's not a single moment where I actually felt like my party was travelling together. You explore and fight as a party, but when actual cutscenes happen, everyone is just absent. I understand why this happened. At any point in the game, the player can have any combination of the 8 party members with them. This is a technical nightmare to figure out, but in going the easy route, everything just feels disconnected. Primrose is here having the defining moment of her life. Ulbrich was just fighting with her, but I guess he ran off screen to tie his shoelaces or something. I'm not saying that the active party members need to have dialogue for these scenes, just having them there would have made everything feel a bit more connected. Party members don't even talk to each other on the road, like at all. In battle, they just say the same couple of lines constantly. I'm convinced that Ulbrich saying, "Ah, the thrill of the fight," before the battle win theme plays will be the last thing I hear before I die. Your mileage with the tales themselves will vary. There are 8 here, so I'd say the chance of none of them resonating with you is pretty slim. Of the 8, Cyrus was my favourite. Guy's got high intelligence and low wisdom, if you know what I mean, but it made him relatable in my eyes. I also really enjoyed Tressa and Ophelia's stories. The only tale and character that I didn't like was the Hunter. Voice acting is sparse, but when it does pop up, it is pretty well done. Some of the speech patterns and dialects might annoy you, Your Excellency, but everything is well acted, if a little stilted in pacing, as you have to press A to hear every new voice line. We do the JRPG writing thing where we need to say things 3 times. A cutscene will open telling you that it's 8 years ago, and then we'll go back to the present, and the character will say, "It's been 8 years since then." And then someone else will walk in and say, "Oh, you were thinking about Jeff? It's been 8 years since we've seen him." And it makes me feel like the game doesn't trust that I'm actually paying attention. There's also the issue of pacing. Having all of the character tales both mixed in and separate makes for a bit of a mess. I can't remember what we were doing with Alfin last time he had a story bit, because it's been 10 hours since his last chapter, and I've played another 6 completely different stories since then. Let me be clear, I don't hate the stories here, but it's like going to a buffet rather than a standard restaurant. Sure, the buffet has a little bit of everything, but a restaurant that focuses on one thing will always be a more fulfilling and tightly woven experience. Octopath Traveler is getting a 3 out of 5 for its narrative offering. I think the idea here is fantastic, and I'm hoping to see the sequel improve on that aspect, but the execution is rough. Gameplay narrative link is practically non-existent, but the tales themselves all have something to offer, and the characters are all, at the very least, competently written, even if you won't resonate with all of them.
Now,
Octopath Traveler is a technically sound, enormous content offering. Content-wise, you're getting a full world to explore with 8 main tales. We experienced no bugs whilst playing. You do get 24 save slots, plus an autosave slot, and yes, I will continue to be a crazy person that only uses 1 save slot in JRPGs. Settings are limited, but everything here has a purpose. The only absent setting I wanted was an auto text button, so I could just watch the cutscenes instead of having to press A every 5 seconds. Here's what you can tweak. There are major language options for in-game text. You can choose between Japanese and English voice acting. Message speed can be toggled between default and quick. Vibration can be enabled. You can set the battle cursor to remember your last action position, or just start from the top each turn. You can enable corner shadows, and there is a brightness slider. There are sliders for voice, music, sound effects, and ambient sounds. There's also a button to reset settings to default in each menu. Let's cover the stuff that would usually be a problem, but isn't in Octopath's case. There are no subtitle options, but all of the subtitles within the game are easily readable. Dialogue has separate text boxes. These screens make everything nice and dark for you to read, and menu text and icons are kept simple. There are no accessibility options, but I'm finding that JRPGs in this vein kind of get away with that. There is nothing here that requires a lot of dexterity, and everything is prompted with symbols and button prompts. UI is primarily black and white. The only misstep here is that objectives are green, and some colorblind filters would have been nice. But none of these issues are big enough to knock a point off, and thanks to the insane content offering and technical soundness, Octopath Traveler gets the full 5 out of 5 for specs.
With each battle, I grow stronger.
It's going to take you in the ballpark of 60 to 80 hours to complete Octopath Traveler. This is a pretty big ask. However, the game does a lot to let you break up that large amount of time into manageable chunks, which I really appreciate. It also respects your hard drive immensely, clocking in at 3.4 gigabytes. For a game this big, this is frankly insane. Slow internet users, data cap havers, and small hard drive owners, fear not. Fitting Octopath Traveler around your life is very easy, and this is thanks to an abundance of save points in tandem with an autosave feature. Autosave kicks in anytime you move areas, but save points are practically everywhere. Even if you're mad like me and only use one save slot, you'll always have a backup autosave. Usually I'd be really annoyed about only being able to save at save points, as it makes playing a bit here or there harder, but with Octopath, the longest I went with being unable to save was a 30-minute boss fight, and I consider that pretty reasonable. The only commitment issues I have are the random encounters and grind I mentioned in the gameplay section. Random encounters just extend travel time and can't really be prepared for. It's not very fun if you set aside an hour to play and spend that whole time just wading through random battles. Similarly, it's not fun if that hour is spent grinding because you turned off the random battles yesterday. These issues in tandem with the long game length are what knock a point off. Despite that though, I'm pretty impressed. Octopath Traveler is friendly to your hard drive, and I found it incredibly easy to squeeze in play sessions. The 60-hour length is pretty daunting, and some of the mechanics can make your time feel wasted, but I have to commend Octopath here. It's doing a better job of respecting your time than most JRPGs, and gets a 4 out of 5 on our commitment scale.
I'll get stronger too, and we'll see each other again. Have my word.
Octopath Traveler is worth your time. It isn't perfect, but it is a great experiment, and I'll always commend games that try something new, even if it doesn't quite work out. Backing the weird narrative experiment is solid gameplay and frankly masterful art direction. Here I was, thinking that the Persona games were my one JRPG exception, but Octopath Traveler surprised me in making me realise that I do just like JRPGs, and now I've got an entire new genre to explore. The game that has that effect on me is definitely something special.